hope you're well, and thanks for tuning in. As I said, this part of our class is all about writing our article and discussing leadership skills. And these are, as Stephen Covey says, public victories, and it's learning how to engage with best communication practices with others. And one of the things, just like death and taxes, that you're not going to get out of is meetings. You, in your lifetime, will sit through plenty of meetings, much to your distress. And many of those meetings will be such a bad use of your time, you will be screaming inside. I've been through lots of meetings that were unnecessarily a waste of my time, but I've also been in good meetings that, wow, in these meetings, things happened that couldn't have happened individually. So I want to spend this class this week talking about meetings, talking about groups, talking about facilitation, because as a leader, you will be called upon to facilitate, to be able to lead meetings and to be able to build consensus and move a group of people toward a common goal. So our first part is going to be talking about groups and how we can best utilize groups so that the sum of the parts is going to be, the whole is going to be much greater than the sum of the parts. I think that's how that goes. All right, so let's move on. What groups do you belong to? Let me ask you to take a few minutes and discuss the groups that you belong to. And these groups could be at school, they could be at work, they could be extracurricular groups like maybe a softball or a club. It could be a religious group. So many different groups that you can belong to. And why, let me ask, do you join groups? Is there a reason? Maybe it's because you share similar interests, or it could be because you're similar, or because you have been assigned. There's lots of different reasons to join the groups that you do. And if we wanted to define what a group is, usually it's two or more. That duh, and they're connected together. So there's some type of connection. That's why we get together in a group, is because we either share something in common, like we have a goal, like we want to win a championship, or we want to complete a project, or we want to tell a story, or we want to commune, or there's lots of reasons, but there's got to be a common purpose. Plus, then there's got to be a sense of belonging. When you're part of a group, there's got to be something that identifies all of you together. There's a common thread. And then the other thing is that groups have influence on one another. So in a group, one person might be able to influence another's thinking, behavior, feelings, and it's most important to understand too that there's a thread, there's a common thread, there's something that's connecting them. There's a reason and that connection. And I want to also point out that there's formal and informal groups. And formal might be something at work, or maybe you were an honor society in high school, or maybe you're at a social club here in campus, and there's a formal proceedings. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to the Senate on campus. They have meetings, or the SDA meeting. There's formal processes that happen. Some are more formal than others. Some are very informal. Like I remember when I worked at the county, there was an informal lunch bunch, and it was just a group of people that always went out to lunch together. And I observed this as their director, that if I needed to find the scoop or the pulse on my team, I would ask my secretary, who was part of the lunch bunch, because she kind of had that informal access to groups and to the staff. And so not that she was narking on anybody, but she would let me know if there was something I needed to address, or if people were feeling restless, or if I needed to be gentle and give them an afternoon off, or get a little harder how to go about doing that. But formal groups, have a specific process or a systematic way of coming together, and informal might be a little less structured, or a little more loose, or it might be more fluid, but both are very important. And it's important for you to see formal and informal groups, and how they're exerting influence, how they have a common purpose, how each of the members belong. All right. And Also, I want to share with you about groups is that way back in the 60s, in 1965, Tuckman, I always want to call him Tuckerman, but Tuckman, he did a lot of research, a lot of new research on groups and group dynamics. And this has stood the test of time, his theory on group, and that, there's a process that groups go through as they develop and mature. And it's a five-stage process, and it's forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And if we were in class, we'd do a fun activity where we'd be doing almost like that. You can hear me clapping. It's like that where you're with a friend and you're doing the clapping thing where you're touching your hands together, which we can't do right now. But just to have fun playing with forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. It's important for you to know these stages. And I was never so tickled than when one of my students who was getting his MBA at Pomona, he told me he sent me an email and was laughing because he's like, oh my gosh, we're doing the forming, storming, norming, and he's like, I really missed our hand claps. So this is taught in MBA school, and it's all about, because as leaders, you're going to have to lead groups, and you need to know where you are because there's different things you do at different stages to help group formation and group threading and group all the things we talked about what a group does. You want to help facilitate that. So forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Let's talk through each of these. So forming is like the awkward, uneasy first day of class where everyone's kind of looking at the ground, looking at each other, sizing them up, trying to be on your best behavior, and then your personalities come through in the next part. So forming is where you're just getting acquainted, you're meeting each other, you're on your best behavior, you're trying to figure out what you're doing, how you're going to do it, you're getting organized, and this time, you're not going to speak up, you might not show discord. You might not have a different opinion. You'll be quiet. You'll listen, and there'll be people who speak up. But for the most part, in the beginning, everyone's a little quiet as they become comfortable. And during this stage of group formation, you can do a lot as a facilitator, as a leader, to help a group form more effectively. And things you can do are icebreakers, where you can help the members of the group get to know each other, find out similarities, to bond, to understand that we're all human. That's an important component that, minimize the fear and anxiety and uncertainty and suspicion, and increase the camaraderie, collaboration, care, and understanding. So icebreakers, get to know everybody. Okay, that's why you do icebreakers, and these are usually fun games or fun activities in the beginning that helps people to, break barriers and get to know one another. And then introductions are always important, especially if someone new comes to the group. Introductions are important so that, again, people feel comfortable, and a lot of times you'll spend some time in introductions. And there's a lot of different ways you could do introductions to make them, less annoying, especially when you start and then just go down the room, down the rows. I mean, that gets really monotonous, but there's lots of fun things you could do with introductions, but it's important for people to be able to know who's there, what their positions are, what they're about, and introductions can play a key role in helping people to become acquainted. And then the rules of engagement. Rules of engagement I have found to be really helpful, and I should do them more in my classes, and I'm kind of negligent on this, but it could be helpful. And well, I do. I mean, I give you rules of engagement. I give you a syllabus, and it's not real collaborative, meaning I don't give you a lot of opportunity to help with the rules of engagement. I don't offer, you to build the rules of engagement. I kind of tell you the lay of the land and the laws of the land in the syllabus. But, if I was doing I've done a lot of community group meetings where I've brought communities together to solve problems, and we have to move forward with a common goal, and to get to that we need rules of engagement. So what do we accept in terms of our meeting behaviors? Coming in on time, turning off our cell phones, not interrupting each other, allowing all ideas the benefit of the doubt. So there's ways that as humans we can agree to collaborate, and the rules of how we are going to get together, and the social mores we're going to perform with our group. That could be really powerful. And typically, these rules of engagement, we'll write them down and have them as a living, breathing document as part of our, you know, methods for securing the group consensus. So, whether you give them or whether as a team you develop them, I highly recommend, like if you work in group settings, someone asked the question, well, what's our expected turnaround time for communication? So like, what's the rules of engagement for a group project? You know, when are we expecting everybody to respond? Within 24 hours, 48 hours? What are the rules in terms of how we manage this group project? So, these kind of questions are better asked in the beginning than at the end when things aren't getting done. So this could be very helpful for getting groups to move forward. All right, so that's forming. Lots of things you can do to help get acquainted, overcome anxiety, develop that commonality, that thread, that human quality that's important as groups get together. Now, after forming comes storming, and this is where there's no more politeness, and there might be tension, there might be struggles, there might be arguments, there might be different approaches because, when people ask, well, what are we going to do together? There might be different ideas, and people, might be very vested in their ideas or, not willing to see both sides or compromise or negotiate. So this is where, there might be some conflict that you need as you formulate and build that commonality. And, there might be power struggles, there might be authority issues, there might be responsibilities, who's responsible for what, and people stepping up to take responsibility. And what we need out of this development is we need discussion that is effective and that gets us to a common goal. And we need decisions. We need decisions to be made that everyone's on board with. And again, getting people on board can be tough, especially if we all have our vested opinions. So during this phase, as we are managing and struggling to determine a common goal, this might need a special facilitator. And a facilitator is someone who helps to deal with both process and people. I mean, in groups, we got to get stuff done, but yet at the same time, we don't want to trample over people, and we want to make sure that we're giving special attention to both getting stuff done, but the people who are doing it. And a lot of times, groups are ineffective because they're too worried about the outcome and the task and forget about the people that are part of it. And people need certain things, right? Humans are funny that way, that we want to be respected and we want to be able to contribute equally and we want to collaborate and we all want to, you might have been in a group where people didn't take as like there was unequal responsibility, that kind of stuff. And, when groups, we don't want to not go through storming. I know a lot of people are like, ooh, it doesn't sound like fun, but through it, people can determine strengths and the group can become stronger and more versatile. And, it's an important phase and it's nothing to minimize because it's part of getting to the next stage, which is norming. And this is where groups become more functional. They, start cooperating, they have common direction, everything's agreed upon, there should be a strong division of responsibility. And this is where when you're in the norming and you're moving forward with getting stuff done, is that you should have an agenda so things can be as productive as possible, or a scope of work. That's what SOW means, a scope of work, so that you can always keep your eye on the prize. I always told my team at the public health department, our action plan is our compass. And I always started our meeting with, let's just start with the end in mind. Remember, another Stephen Coveyism. What do we need to achieve through our scope of work? What have we determined to be our common goal, and let's start working behind what do we need to do to get to that common goal. And that's what our norming was all about, is the fact that we had a common goal and we were working towards it. And so always reminding the staff through the scope of work, through an agenda, about where we're trying to get to, okay, beginning with that end in mind. And then finally, performing and adjourning. So performing is very high level group development, where you're having competent, autonomous, memorable movement, where you are really humming along. And I've had the pleasure of being on teams that performed, and wow, the dynamic is incredible, where everyone takes their responsibility seriously, comes to work prepared. The meetings are a joy, and it's a lot of creative brainstorming and solution oriented versus, stalling or, needless reflection or reporting. It's where, really creative, intellectually stimulating and engaging work gets done. Not all teams get here, and that's okay. Norming can get stuff done, but when it's performing, it's just kind of, there's a little magic. And sometimes, with performing, if someone leaves, it can cause some dysfunction, and you might need to go back to the drawing board, or as a new team member comes on, you might need to again go back to forming and storming. And then finally, Tuckman, remember I told you, is the one who I idealized these theories on group development. He 10 years later added adjourning, which I'm so glad he did, because not all teams stand the test of time, and teams come and go. And as groups wax and wane, as groups start and end, there should be some type of celebration or formal adjournment. And so adjourning, he added 10 years after his initial theory. And this adjourning is important. You're going to adjourn as a cohort. You're going to adjourn. You're the class of 2020. Woohoo! And what do you get? You need to celebrate. You get a diploma, you get a certificate, you get recognition, you get acknowledgement, you get closure. So, adjourning is an important part of any team. And when teams are dissolved, or when teams change because members change, you need to celebrate and stop, and whether it's giving out certificates of accomplishment, or whether it's just having a potluck, adjournment of teams is a really important process, and it gives people the closure, it gives people the kudos, it gives people, the recognition that they deserve, as well as the ability to move on because it's done. So adjourning is another important process. So whether you adjourn every meeting, where you're, at the end of your meeting, you do some type of celebration until you meet again, or if you adjourn at the end of a long-term group. Like one time I had a project that I was with them for 2 years, and at the end, our group was dissolving. Okay, we were moving on, and we were all moving into different capacities and different projects. And so we had a great celebration, and we honored all of the team commitments and reflected, and just, it was a wonderful time, but because we needed to have some closure. I mean, if we just left, kind of wandered off to the sunset, it would have felt kind of weird, and that we hadn't ended properly. So keep in mind the importance of adjourning whenever you do end a group meeting, or whenever you end a group project. It's important to celebrate, okay? And even with a school group project, at the end, after your presentation, or after you get that paper done, it would be nice if you guys could, celebrate and cheer yourselves on, or do a salute, or something, to acknowledge that you got it done. Okay, it's important. And these are the stages of group development. And when I asked you, are you a part of a team? Why do you participate in groups, or being a part of a team? Where is that team? So you might want to ask, where is your team? And have you experienced all of these different group stages of forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning? So let me ask you about teams and what groups do. Let's have a little meeting let's have I love Dilbert. It's so funny. And I've tried to pick out some Dilbert comics here. Let's have a little pre-meeting to prepare for the meeting tomorrow. Whoa. Do you think it's safe to jump right into the pre-meeting without planning it? Okay, let's get this preliminary pre-meeting going. And then that guy says, you think you're funny, but you're not. You guys, I've been in so many meetings. Oh, in my lifetime, and some have been very important and productive, but many have not been, and they could have been solved with a email. You know what I mean? There's nothing. And we're going to talk about why meet and what do groups do. And a lot of them waste time, but hopefully as a leader, you're going to understand when to meet and when not to meet. And so here's reasons to meet. There are reasons to meet, and we understand that coming together as humans in a group can really do some amazing things. And identifying problems or solving problems, resolving conflicts, that's a great reason to meet. Like, that's why you should never break up with someone over text. Okay, you should really meet in person, because body language, remember when we talked about the communications process, verbal, written, body language, visual, it's really important. If you can include more forms of communication, your communication is going to go smoother. So, this is a reason to meet, especially when you're are resolving conflict or when you are solving problems, it's a good time to get together. If you want to brainstorm or generate ideas, you want to establish goals, you want to determine which outcomes are your plans, if you want to educate or train or talk about best practices or lessons learned, this is a good time. Hence conferences or educational events. It's wonderful to be in person. And again, create buy-in, trust, team spirit. There's again things that are better done together in person than through email or through the phone. I'll remember one time at the county, a policy was implemented that was really negative, and I could have just sent the policy out and just, let everyone read it and get pissed off. But instead, I said, we're going to have a team meeting, and I had to, as a leader, I have to be the face of the organization, and I wanted them to hear the policy changes because I wasn't happy with them, and I knew my staff wouldn't be happy with them. But I wanted to let them know that, I cared enough that I was willing to step up in front and take the heat and let them know that, you know, we're implementing this policy. We're not going to like it, but this is what we have to do. And, it was a way for my team to build trust with me and to know that I had their back, even in good times or in bad. And so, there are times when you really need to meet, and a lot of stuff, great stuff, good stuff, important stuff gets done. However, on that flip side of reasons to meet, there are reasons not to meet. And again, a lot of times when I'm having a meeting, I'm like, can I handle this through email? Can I handle this through a quick conversation? Can I handle this some other way than getting people physically together? Because it takes resources to get people physically together, time, energy, and effort to get people together. And this is what's going to be interesting after COVID-19 is to see what happens to meetings that were deemed so necessary, that use so many resources. It's just so nice to know that we can get stuff done through Zoom, we can get stuff done through the phone, we can get stuff done through email, but yet there is a spirit that has to happen when people come together. And so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. What is going to be deemed in terms of in-person meetings as vital. Okay, so first of all, ask yourself, can I do this another way that'll save time, energy, and resources, or is a meeting necessary? And if you're not prepared, if you are not prepared, there are times when I had to cancel meetings at the county, because we just didn't have the information, or we didn't have the feedback, or we didn't get the results, or we just weren't ready. Okay. And so we had to stall, because there's no point in getting together if you can't get done what you need to get done. And again, Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. What do you want to get out of this meeting? What is so important that you need to get out of this meeting, that you're bringing these people together? And do you have everything necessary to get that done? If you need decision makers and they're not available to join, then, do you need your department head there? Do you need your director there? Do you need, community members there? What do you need? And if they can't make it, then you might as well cancel, because nothing's going to happen without those decision makers. And again, if you don't know why you're meeting or what the outcome is, what do you want to get out of it, then I would highly recommend you cancel and really think that through. So whenever I would go into a meeting, I would always have identified the top 3 things I need to get out of that meeting and get done. Okay, so that it was never a waste, because we always were moving forward. But it was always clear. I took a lot of time in planning my meetings to make sure that the outcome was visible, important, and necessary. And then a lot of times meetings are done, with decisions already being made. It's a moot point. There's no brainstorming, problem solving, anything going on that is necessary. But yet at the same time, maybe you want to meet because, again, like my policy example, or if you need to celebrate or develop team spirit or whatever. But, if a decision's already been made and nothing needs to be done and you're just kind of washing your hands of it, then, there's no really reason to meet. All right. So again, groups and teams are important. Groups and teams go through a planned stage process of forming, storming, norming, I forgot. Forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning, right? And and also, just as leaders, you'll want to really identify, is this a good reason to meet or not a great reason to meet? All right. And then in your discussion question for this week, it'll talk about, think about some of the meetings, okay, that you've attended and look at the criteria. Was there a real reason to meet? So, we'll be looking at meetings that you've had in the past. So you'll want to start thinking about meetings you might have had at work or school or with other agencies, and with other aspects of your life. And just think about, what stage were we in? Did we go through different stages? What happened when I joined? Did we form again? Did we go through introductions? Did we go through icebreakers? Did we talk about rules of engagement? And have I witnessed the great experience of storming, that could be a little uncomfortable as there might be, tension or struggles or arguments? And then did I get into norming and performing? And then when I left, was there adjourning? So I'd like you to think about those. All right. And that'll be our assignment for today. All right. Okay. So that's all I have for this section. There's one more section and I broke them up so that it wasn't too long. All right. Thanks and enjoy this component. I miss you today. All right. Bye.